Hey everyone, it's Spicy Sushi. So there's been quite a few people asking about what's my opinion on the Sentinel League and like my just thoughts on the patch notes and the coming changes to endgame. And so I figured I might as well, make a video on that. But just a little forewarning. I hope it's fine with you guys, but I really don't care to talk about things that I'm not interested in personally when a new league comes around. So I'm going to be completely kind of just skipping over those topics. So if there's like a specific topic you're looking for me to comment on, you can comment below and I can reply to that and tell you, like my exact thought on that. Um, but yeah, the Sentinel League mechanic as a whole, I actually have like zero interest in micromanaging this mechanic. I'm probably not going to mess around with it at all, even if it is pretty rewarding. Arch Nemesis, I know there were combinations that were very rewarding, but I still, I absolutely hated the idea of micromanaging any of that. And so I am probably not going to touch it because the idea of these Sentinels having different charges as well as keybinds is an absolute turnoff for me, so it's most likely something I will never mess with. I feel like the magic find changes, though, there's going to be some pretty insane potential here, and honestly, it's absolutely disgusting thinking about how six-man party play groups are going to abuse this mechanic, since apparently every player can have their own three sentinels and be using them. And if like an MF Kohler, the person who does the killing in the six party group, if his kills count towards like the Orobot's Sentinels kills, and like if they're all just chain juicing off of each other in these maps, I'm just gonna have to turn my brain off and ignore how gross the number of mirrors like MP's team and other big groups are gonna make. It's just gonna be, I'm just gonna have to just completely ignore it, because or else I'm gonna get depressed looking at like 20, 30 mirrors just stacking up like it's absolutely nothing. But anyway, as a crafter, I am very excited for the crafting currency the Sentinel mechanic is adding. I assume it's going to be coming from the new Uber bosses. I believe that was confirmed, but I'm not sure. But it would follow the trend of other Uber currencies for crafting, such as like Orb of Dominance, Orb of Conflict, Awakener Orb, Conquer Exalts. They all come from bosses, right? They're not just regular map drops from League mechanics. So I believe this new Sentinel League mechanic is currency is probably going to be coming from the new Uber Pinnacle bosses. Um, so the first thing I want to go over is actually my thoughts on the crafting, and because I know a lot of people, there's a lot of confusion about how this new crafting currency is going to work, and obviously we have no clue exactly how it's going to play out, but we do have some hints from Chris Wilson himself in the Q&A, and I do want to go over those today. And after I go over those, I'm going to talk about what a lot of people have been messaging me about is Harvest on the map device, and my thoughts on the Atlas changes, and so we'll go over that at the end. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the crafting.
Are there any like hard rules with this recombinator thing, like for getting the specific modifiers, or is it just kind of going to be like very hard to understand?
It's very random, but I'll be more specific about roughly how this works, and this is probably the most information you're getting, right? So you put two items in, and it's going to pick one of the two base types. So, for example, it'll pick the left or the right. Now, with Sentinels, it has a chance to mutate the base type into a special one or to create a unique. We don't want the recombination process for your equipment to necessarily just randomly change the base type on you or to turn into a unique, because honestly, sometimes that's going to be worth less than the items you put in. So once it's picked a base type, for Sentinels, it uses that base type, and for your items, it retains all the properties of that core base type. For example, any enchants you've got on it, any sockets, corrupted status, implicits, all of that stuff, catalysts or whatever. This all gets dragged along with whichever base type was selected. Then for the explicit mod selection, it basically puts everything in a pool and selects some subset of it. So you get some mods from one of the items, some mods from the other. Sometimes you're unlucky and get way fewer mods than you started with. Sometimes you're lucky and get a whole bunch of good ones you liked. Then there's a chance for various things to occur, like it randomly tinkering with the tiers of the mods or rerolling values. And of course, it can add special mods, basically the mutation outcomes from a special pool. And that's where the really good Sentinel stuff is. You really want to get that available in the pool of stuff that you're combining, because then you get some really, really powerful Sentinels. Obviously, relatively optional, of course. The Sentinels work well without those mods, but they're a lot more powerful with them. And the same is true for regular rare items. If you are doing this basically recombination lottery, you get the ability to get, keystones on body armors and that kind of stuff, which could be pretty useful for some builds.
All right, so let's try to work with what Chris Wilson has given us so far. If it works exactly the way that he described, there's going to be some absolutely busted potential, some possible hot fixes coming in, but we'll just have to see because he has not given us a lot of information, but we can work with what we've got so far. So let's go ahead and start with just the items I want to go over. So basically here we have a astral plate that was chosen to be the acceptor item. Now what that means is that it was chosen to be the base of the result here. So this is the result. I think the best way to look at it is that you have a result, you have two items. One item is chosen as a donator, one is chosen as an acceptor. Now the donator, basically just it's completely deleted. The base is not, taken into account. But the mods are donated to the acceptor. The base is decided. I believe the way it works is any implicits and corruptions on it are chosen as well for the final item. And then it has a combination of the mods. The mods on both items are put into a pool, and he said like the best ones may be chosen for the final result. Now, what's important to note is that Chris Wilson said that a modifier will get chosen, and that means that if that goes through unchanged, like if that's actually how it works, I mean, you could have one mod on one item, one mod on the other item, and both of those mods will be absolutely 100% guaranteed to be on the final item. Maybe this works with two mods as well. If you have two mods on one, two mods on the other, you are absolutely guaranteed for them to be on the final item. We don't know yet. We'll just have to try it out. But what we do know for sure is these examples that they've given us. So the grasping mail that was used was a 100% increased global defense fractured grasping mail. Now it has to be a grasping mail because that is the only base at where this Chayula mod, I believe, is possible. And it must have had spell suppression on it because you cannot have spell suppression on an astral plate. Now this spell suppression could have been tier 1. It could have been a tier 1 grasping mail, or an item level 86 grasping mail, because Chris Wilson said that the mods can be randomly like downranked in tier. So basically there is a chance of that. We don't know how high the chance of that is. If it's a pretty high chance, it'll probably be better to choose mods that cannot be reduced in tier, such as like Culling Strike Influence mod on a Warlord, gloves, unnerve on hit kind of stuff from Hunter gloves, stuff like that. So but here we have two mods were chosen from the grasping mail, and flat armor and increased armor was chosen from the astral plate because you cannot have flat armor and increased armor on a grasping mail. It will always be a hybrid combination since it is a hybrid base. But what we do know for sure is that those two mods were chosen, and these two mods were chosen from the astral plate. The astral plate was the acceptor of the process, because it was the base that was chosen, and it looks like Magebane was added at the very end. And yeah, so that's what happened here. So this ring, the +1 max power charge had to have been the Sentinel mod pool, because that mod does not exist in our current game other than a synthesis implicit or on a unique item on like a precursors ring, unique ring. So this was definitely from the Sentinel mod pool. Now what exactly was on okay, so what could have happened here was basically we had two rings. We have like the Hunter ring here, we have the random ring here. It did not have to be Hunter influence. It could have just been a Elrion unveiled ring that had the non-channeling moved over to the prismatic Hunter ring here. That could have been what happened there. Now the Hunter ring could have had that on its own. It is possible, I believe, so it could have had that, and maybe the other ring just had a bunch of random stuff like cast speed, all res, stuff like that. You can't really tell from this, but what we do know from Chris is that that's important to note is that of the two items that we have in our recombination sequence here, if one of them is not influenced, it cannot be chosen as well. It can be chosen as the accepting item of the mods of the other item, but none of them would be able to be influence mods since it has no influence. So if you want your item to have influence mods, it has to have the same influence as the other item if it's chosen in the 50-50, because it's a 50-50 choice here. And so I do want to kind of go over what could be possible here. Basically is that, let's say we have like a fingerless silk glove with the temple mod, hits against chilled enemies. And let's say we have a fingerless silk gloves with Culling Strike on them from the Warlord mod pool. And in the 50-50 process, if it chooses the Temple Gloves with, hits against chilled enemies to be the acceptor of the Warlord item mods, the Culling Strike would not be able to be moved over. But let's say you slammed the Fingerless Silk Gloves on the left with a Hunter Exalt and you isolated the chill, maybe through like a suffixes cannot be changed scour, or, there's a number of ways to do that to make sure it's by itself, then it wouldn't matter in the 50-50. And if both of them are Fingerless Silk Gloves, your result is going to be a Fingerless Silk Glove. So that is a really important thing to think about, because there's some ridiculous items that can be made using that process there. Now, let's go ahead and cover this last Stygian Vice. These magic utility flasks applied to you have 22% increased effect, gain Alchemist Genius when you use a flask, flash charges gained, life, and fire resistance. So the flash charges gained is already a item in the base mod pool, and the Alchemist Genius is from a essence. I forget which essence it is. Maybe it's Horror Essence. I think it was new with this patch. I don't remember. But the magic utility flask was definitely the Sentinel mod pool. So this is pretty interesting, I guess. I mean, if you don't have a Mage Blood yet, maybe there's some pretty cool items that can be made here. Like maybe some pseudo Mage Blood kind of belts. Like maybe it'll be better than Mage Blood in the end, depending on what you want your build to do. But I can imagine they'd be extremely expensive. So definitely, yeah, there was a belt with Alchemist Genius, there was a belt with increased charges gain, and they were slammed together. This could also not be the case. Maybe one of the belts had Alchemist Genius and flash charges gain. Like maybe they hit it with the essence and they hit flash charges gain, and the other belt had like life, fire res. There's a lot of possibilities here. But in the end, the Sentinel mod pool mod was the magic utility flask applied, have 22% increased effect was the one that was chosen. Now, if these currencies are very rare, it's going to be reserved for very, very high-end crafting. If it's extremely rare, very expensive, they're going to be bought out by the top crafters in the game, and there's just going to be an absolutely disgusting gap created there between, crafters and the average player, which, I mean, to be honest, if they don't do that, there's going to be some ridiculous game-breaking items created way too easily. Now, do I care that it's way too easily? No, but, I could see GGG having some issues, or the community having some issues with that. So these may be like 2 to 3 exalts each, possibly, or they could be more common from the bosses. But if I were to guess, I think this is going to be like the rarity of like an Orb of Dominance or something from Cyrus. I could see it, or like, Uber Elder, stuff like that. I could see it being pretty rare, and so we could be seeing the 2 to 3 exalt plus range. But even then, it's going to be exceptionally powerful. Like, just think of those gloves that I talked about earlier. Imagine once you combine those two mods together, you could go for the suffixes cannot be changed Ashling to try to add a veiled suffix, and then your prefixes are pretty easy after that. You could reforge Caster for T1 spell damage, and then maybe finish with some crafted life, or even go for like an Exalt Slam for, life, and then finish with like damage while leeching. There's a lot of possibilities here, basically, is what I want to, pretty much talk about there. So, yeah. So let's go ahead and move into the, what I think about the new Atlas changes. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about what I think about the new Atlas. So Harvest is on the device for 12 Chaos now, and honestly, that's pretty awesome because, there's no longer having to worry about Sextants or Sextants increasing in price. I'm going to be honest, in past leagues, whenever I've been spamming Harvest with the Sextant on stream, I didn't know if I was going to wake up the next day and Sextants would be like a 2 exalts higher than when I last did it, because Harvest is a very niche money-making method, and when I'm doing it, usually there's not that many Sextants on the market, so they get kind of bought out. Last league, not the case as much, because compasses were very common, but in the past, it has been, an issue before that. But it's on the map device now, so we don't have to worry about that. Now, the thing is that I could see Exalts being very cheap this league, very, very cheap, actually, because of Delirium. Okay, I say cheap, but I mean more like, more expensive, because you're going to be wanting to blow a lot of chaos on like Delirium Mirror, and I'm going to be blowing it on Harvest, and so Exalts could go very down in value because chaos are increasing a lot in value, I guess is what I mean to say. So we're going to have to see how that plays out. But honestly, with the new Atlas changes, we don't even have to pay for Harvest if we don't want to. Now, paying for Harvest is going to be great if you're using the specific Harvest plot Sextants. I'm not going to go too much into detail about Atlas strategies. There's some pretty ridiculous ones, but I'm going to save those for my week 1 strategy video that I'm going to be releasing probably tomorrow or the next day. And then I'll go over in a very specific detail on exactly what I'm going to be doing. But, you know, Firegrass is calculated on like a spreadsheet. If the numbers really do turn out like the way he calculated it, you could get Harvest with a 40% chance with proper lead mechanic blocking and still get benefit from the notable nodes on the Atlas tree, which is really good because that is much better than Kirak. If anyone says Kirak is just the exact same as just regular Harvest, they're dead wrong. You are missing out on like 40+% number of seeds, as well as the chance to like double seeds and stuff. Like there's a lot of things you're missing out on by doing Kirak. And so with this new change, there's no reason to do Kirak Harvest really. You could easily, because maps are so dirt cheap nowadays with all the sustain, with how OP our Atlas is, that, almost every 1 in 2 maps to get a Harvest is going to be ridiculous. So yeah, I'm really, really excited for that. This is a massive improvement compared to the 1 in 6 chance we had before that made Kirak desirable for some people. But yeah, if you are using these specialized harvest sections, like I will be, paying 12 chaos is going to be the way, honestly, because 12 chaos is so dirt cheap, and there's no way that you can make less than 12 chaos in a harvest if you know what you're doing. So yeah, I guess the last thing I want to talk about is comments on the new Mageblade Divination card. That is going to be pretty interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if this is actually not even like really a way that people make a Mageblade with, or if this just turns out to be a House of Mirrors. What I mean by that is no one actually makes a mirror with a House of Mirrors. They just use it to gamble divination cards because it's so much. It's like it usually turns in to be about 30% more expensive than an actual mirror to turn it in. So you are wasting money if you make a mirror with the mirror card. So if it turns out that it's more than a Mageblood to make the Mageblood card, no one's going to be making a Mageblood with it. It's just going to be used for divination card gambling and harvest. So we'll just see how that works. It purely speculation, of course, but yeah, overall, I'm more excited for this league than I ever have been before, even though I don't care about the league mechanic at all, because there's going to be so much diversity in the end game when it comes to uber bosses, when it comes to crafting, when it comes to just Alch and Go. Alch and Go is going to be the strongest it ever has been, literally ever. So I think casual players are going to have a lot of fun with this. So it's going to be great, and I will see you this league, guys. I'll be streaming all leagues, so I'll see you then. Bye.